KK Reaper.
And I'm Luna Reaper.
And this is A Frightful Eve. This evening, we will be reviewing Orphan First Kill, the prequel to 2009's Orphan film that explains Esther's origins, from psychiatric wards to making her way to the US and conning the adoption agencies.
But first, the horror news.
Harry Styles will be joining the horror community with his role in the upcoming film Don't Worry Darling. Styles plays Jack, a 1950s husband to Alice Chambers, played by Florence Pugh, who are moved into an experimental utopian community by Jack's employer. Though as they continue to live in this neighborhood, Alice fears Jack's company may be hiding some dark secrets. Don't Worry Darling had its world premiere at the 79th Venice International Film Festival this week, and is scheduled to be released in the United States on September 23rd of this year.
Trick or Treat is coming to theaters this October after 15 years. For those familiar with such a cult classic, it's surprising to realize not many people have this on their Halloween watch list. With horrific events happening in the same town on the same night, a multi-level horror film will keep your attention beginning to end. Other recognizable films will be coming back to theaters this Halloween season. However, this will be a first for Trick or Treat on the big screen.
The trailer for Smile has had many jumping out of their seats, most notably from the car window scene. It has recently been making its rounds on the internet once again as we near Smile's theatrical release date of September 30th. After witnessing a bizarre, traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. If the rest of this movie is anything like that scene, it'll certainly leave you nervous to run into anyone cracking a smile.
We witnessed the origin story of Pearl, played by Mia Goth, a prequel to A24's X, a young woman aiding her ill and helpless father, as well as being under the watch of her controlling and belittling mother. With the dream of being a star, loved by all, nothing will stand in her way. Seems familiar? Is this a story of an innocent soul corrupted by greed and pride, or the story of a murderous sociopath with the dream to be loved by the masses that do not know her sins?
Lacuna Coil will be heading out on their North American tour alongside acts Butcher Babies, Uncured, and Lines at the Gate. The tour starts this week in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and closes out on September 23rd in Joliet, Illinois. Lacuna Coil just released a new version of their song Tightrope that is heavier and with better production than the original, in anticipation of their updated album, Comely's XX, along with an accompanying cinematic music video. You can pre-order the new album, which will also include the original tracks and is set for release on October 14th, on their official website, and you can catch them live at a venue near you this month.
Shudder's debuting Fear for Queer, a documentary diving into the world of horror and its queer influences, undertones, and even mistakes made in the past. Shudder has done a great job bringing many amazing actors, directors, and producers of the LGBTQ+ community to talk about how horror and queerness may not be dependent on one another, but certainly are not exclusive to each other either. Here at Frightful Eve, KK and I can certainly agree that hearing like-minded creators talk about a mutual passion will be fulfilling and informative. We can't wait to see it on September 30th.
For more information on these events, check the links in the description below.
And now for the review of Orphan First Kill.
So all in all, I would say that Orphan First Kill was a pretty decent prequel to the original Orphan movie.
Yeah, I think they did a great job. I think Isabel being a 25-year-old right now, playing a 10-year-old again, or at 10-year-old.
10-year-old, yeah.
Again, the CGI was great. The body doubles were great. That could have looked really cheesy really quickly, and I thought it was executed pretty well.
That's the interesting thing too. You know, I didn't actually even notice that, which I guess just goes to show how well done it was.
Yeah.
That they had to have the body doubles in there, obviously, because she's much taller than she once was.
Yes.
But yeah, you know, the CGI in an era where like either it's really good or it's really not, they managed to execute it really well, and especially for what I would imagine is a lower budget film. It wasn't in any real major theaters. You know,
Yeah.
we had to go to AMC to see it.
Yes.
You know, all the way in, what was it, Eatontown or something like
Brunswick.
that? New Brunswick, yeah. You know, not our traditional Hazlitt 12 Cinemark.
I know you had some opinions on the beginning.
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff a lot of new elements, you know, the fact that you're seeing her in the psychiatric ward and you're getting to know who Esther is from the very origins, you know, like obviously she was a little bit insane, and she was a very good con artist in what she was doing as a 30-year-old, presenting herself as a 10-year-old, trying to, I guess, live off of these people. And so you get that glimpse into her life, but then as it progresses on, you start to see a lot of the same tropes that the original used. Like,
Yes.
you know, her falling in love with the dad, and, you know, settling in with the family, and like the quirky, like, you know, I mean, it still builds that suspense to have that feeling of, you know, whether or not she'll slip up somewhere and get caught in what she's trying to do. But I mean, up until the plot twist happens, you're just sort of feeling like, you know, I felt at least that I was sitting there like, this is Orphan 2009, like, you know, except for the psychiatric ward, you know, from that was an interesting thing, but it was also still a little, I don't know, something about it felt a little choppy, like they were kind of just rushing it to get to the main point. And then once they got there, I was under the assumption that it was going to stay there the whole time, and I was going to be like, I'm watching Orphan for the second time. And that was my biggest concern, you know?
I got it. You made a good point as far as the mom's acting before the plot twist that I thought was really good to bring up. We were under the impression when we first got to this film that this actress that we all know and love, back from the days of 10 Things I Hate About You, we thought she lost her gift for acting. We thought she was very structured, very awkward, and we thought that was how it was going to be, not realizing that the mom had a secret and she was playing someone who was a bad liar.
Right.
Which I thought
and that was
great.
like, it's a very cool thing to have happen in a horror film, where, like, you know, a lot of movies, there's a lot of movies out there that you watch it once and you're like, I got my fill and that's it. Like, I would actually go and watch First Kill again, just now knowing what I know, to be able to see, like, oh, this is a mom playing the role of a mom in this film, not just bad acting. Like, it's bad acting on the behalf of the character. Yeah. And that's such a cool dynamic once you get to the point of the big reveal and you're like, wow, like, this is the, you know, it's like it's all coming together, and the acting from that point on for her is phenomenal.
Yes.
So, like, it really, like, sinks in that detail that, like, that was all just an act on the behalf of the mother, and not just like poor acting in the first half and suddenly the second half gets better. Like, it was all just an act.
Yes, when we found out that the original daughter that they were missing was killed in a freak accident by their son playing too rough and the mom covering up, I did not see that coming at all.
No.
Definitely did not see that. And this father is just completely, you know, none the wiser about what's truly going on with his deeply twisted family. Like,
Yeah.
she definitely found the right crowd.
So scorned, you know, so traumatized by the event that he was just willing to accept anything that would be his daughter at that point.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And that was, it was interesting. The father, Alan, coming and grabbing her with open arms. And again, you see all these little details of the mother being a little bit more hesitant. What's her name? Tricia. She's a little bit more hesitant with Esther being like, I know you're not Esther because she's dead.
And the brother.
Buried in that. And the brother, and now that you mentioned that too, if you look at the way that the brother acts throughout the movie, like the first half of the movie, he's also kind of like, you just assume that he's a brat. But the reason that he's such a brat to her is because of the fact that he knows that that's some fraudulent person, like that she's just trying to get in on, reap the rewards of that family.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, I'm not having any of it, And that's he tries to set that tone too with the whole, this is my house, and this you're playing by my rules. And I love the fact that Esther by that point is just having none of it. Once the big reveal with that whole situation happens, she's like, all right, gloves are off. Like, if you're gonna fight me, I'm gonna fight back. And it's really, it takes such an interesting turn from that point because of the fact that it's killer versus killer.
Everyone was very dimensional in this movie. Everyone was complex and a whole person, and you knew everything that you needed to know about everyone.
Their motives,
yes.
And it was very clear, and that the fact that you have, there's no protagonist. No. You do feel like a little bit worse at that point for Esther because you're like, now I think like in the immediate sense, like when you're looking at the scene and you're like, wow, this is rough. But then you remember like, oh, Esther is a serial killer.
Yes.
So it's neat, like that antagonist versus antagonist concept. But, also going back to the plot twist, I think that needs to be mentioned too. The point at which you find out that everything is going down. Mm-hmm. The detective who's getting a little too close to finding the answers. Yeah. That reveal. Yeah. The mother,
popping a cap?
Popping a cap in him. Like, it's that whole scene really was so well done from, like, you just assume that Esther is going there to kill him.
Yes.
And you think, again, like I said, if you know the first movie, you're like, all right, this is just the train of events that's going to unfold. She's going to kill him, things are going to start to unravel, and then she's going to have to kill the rest of the family and move on to the next victims. So having that sequence where she's behind him, ready to go in for the, and she does go in for the kill, if I remember correctly. She cuts his throat or something. After he's discovered all the fingerprints and the fact that Esther is not who she says she is and all that. That whole thing, how did you know I wasn't Esther? My own mother doesn't know. And she's just like, she does. And then boom. It's like, whoa. Like I remember actually like sitting there the whole time like this. That was the one thing that I was like, no way,
Which is why it was such a good horror movie. It had great twists. It had great gore. I mean, I love me some corn syrup blood, and it was there.
Yes, definitely.
Starting right off the bat with Candy Lady.
Yeah,
absolutely annihilating that, poor security officer that's probably just there doing his 9 to 5.
And it was cool. Honestly, I wasn't sure what direction that was going in with the whole psychiatric ward. Obviously, you just have like, crazy people for the sake of being crazy. Yeah. And you just assume that lady is one of those people. And then it turns out that Esther is feeding her candy to train her like, whatever that Pavlov or I forget what that, it's a psychology thing. Oh. Like good reward, good, bad punishment, whatever I don't know how that goes.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I hear you. Yeah. I loved it.
But yeah, her taking out the guard was great. I mean, there's a couple of scenes there where it's not really like that. Her taking out the guard was cool in the sense that she used the candy to trick this woman into doing her bidding.
Yes.
But you don't see a lot of what's going on because it's mostly from the security cam footage.
Yeah.
But more so like the janitor, the pervy janitor.
Oh, pervy janitor falling for her seduction, which I wanted to not think was happening at first, but then I was like, let's be real, this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Her bringing him in, her standing on a chair, get on his level, assuming something's gonna happen, and just, a little bash against the wall. One after...
pumpkin bash, just splat open.
Just a little bit more, which, I don't feel bad for the guy.
Oh, no. It's like, and it's definitely that whole situation was made, it was weird to begin with. It was even weirder that he was so awkward with it and just leading into that. So it was like, thank goodness it was over with a head bash.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, going on terms of effects and things of that nature, the rat scene when they try to poison Esther, or the mom and Gunnar try to poison Esther after everything's been unveiled.
Which, so beneath her.
And,
so beneath her.
Right.
After all we do, you're really just going to sprinkle some of that into some mac and cheese?
And that's just going to be it? Yeah.
Come on.
Right. Mac and cheese and hot dogs, no less. Right. It's a funny, that's actually like a decent amount of comic relief in this film without it being too over the top. Like the fact that they're playing family in front of the dad this whole time, and all the relatives and all that, like just trying to play a bit. And every time that she steps out of line, even remotely, she's like, like, nope. And that was just like the hot dogs and mac and cheese was like a punishment. But she's like, oh, you love mac, that's your favorite dish, like.
They were having something really good that night, and she's like,
yeah, she's like,
damn it.
But bringing the dish up, and she's like, I'll eat up in my room, feeding it to the rat. The rat being, I guess, kind of her little friend in the room, since she has no one else to really talk to or understand what's going on from her perspective. And rat dies.
Yeah.
And instant revenge, she puts it in the drink for mom, and she drinks it. She's like,
protein.
Protein, right? Exactly. Great.
God.
Yeah, the only thing effects-wise outside of, a couple of things with the head bashing and stuff. Not so much the head bashing scene, like the same way that the woman attacking the security officer was like a little underwhelming, only because some of it was left to the imagination, which was nice. I think that at the very end, going into the whole sequence of mom and dad taking a dive.
Yes.
And that is supposed to be the big final conclusion, right? They splat on the ground with like that looked a little bit more CGI than everything else, which was almost like, I get that you're at the end of the movie. I feel like, and I who knows, but like it almost feels like you look at it and you're like, oh, ran out of budget,
Give us some brains, give us some bits.
Right, give us,
go with the flash.
Especially with like those types of characters, like those are your leading roles. They really should have a dignified death in being gruesome and explosive, and so not having that and feeling like, I think the dad is the last one to fall.
Yeah.
He hits the ground and you see the blood splat out, and it looks like, something that you could grab from YouTube, where it's like blood splatter on a green screen effect, and you just sort of key it out. It looks a little bit like that.
I can see exactly what you're describing.
Right.
I see what you mean.
So that was the only little bit of letdown as far as like effects go. Everything else, her stabbing Gunnar to death, the brother, and the whole fight sequence, the house going up in flames.
I thought that was so nice. I love a good calming moment while everything's just gone absolute.
With the song playing in the background that was on her vinyl.
Yes, I think it suits her well. She just enters in people's lives, causes chaos, and just, glides onto
the next family. Yeah.
It was quite literally a good metaphor for everything that she's about. Love a good jazz in the background.
A little bit of jazz in the back, right? Yeah.
Very suave.
But that's, another thing that, as aesthetically pleasing as it was, for a movie that is as literal, or not as literal, but as human-based as this one is,
Yes.
where there's no sci-fi element to it or anything like that. Like, there's no Jason coming out of the water after being under there for 10 hours or something like that, like, or Freddy coming out of the fire.
Yeah.
Like, her walking through that entire house at blistering degrees while the fire is encompassing the house and walking out without even so much as like a smudge of soot, a smudge of soot on her face or something like that just seems so unrealistic compared to everything else that was going on in the film.
Especially since it's loosely
Based
around a
on
true story.
Right, yeah.
I do understand, like, giving her, not literally giving her superpowers, but giving her the ability to walk through flames, since we are trying to stick with the original story that happened in real life.
Yeah.
I get that. I get how that can be a bit much.
Suddenly it's a little bit more fantasy. And I guess, like, that's part of the sequence too. The jazz music playing, everything's in slow motion. Maybe it's just emphasizing that scene. That's not actually what really, maybe she just darted out the door in real life.
It's her dream and their nightmare.
Right, yeah. Oh, no, look at that. But yeah, and the fact that it all finally ties a nice little bow on top with her being picked up by the adoption agency and, finding her way to the next home, which is the home in the 2009 Orphan.
Back to the beginning, a great place to start.
Right, yep. And, it was a perfect setup going all the way through. Like I said, the only real complaints were just a little bit more the gore and the bits and the brains and such. And just not so much of the original in the beginning, but also understanding why that needed to happen to kind of, almost let your guard down, because you're like, oh, it's the original, and then all of a sudden, bam, cop dead, and mom and brother are in on this whole spiel.
Yeah.
So it does kind of throw you from a loop from that point on, like, because you're so used to what's happening, and all of a sudden it's like, nope, not this time.
We agreed pretty immediately for this film, which does not happen a lot for us. This was a very easy decision to come to.
Luna.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not bad.
KK and Luna Reaper.
What, Bartholomew?
What is the final verdict?
Orphan First Kill was an impressive follow-up to the original film, and it really felt like a wild ride that had us on the edge of our seats from the plot twist onward.
We only wish it had managed to maintain that for the first half of the film without relying so heavily on a lot of the major tropes of the original. And for that, we give this film a 7.5 out of 10.
That's our show. Thanks for tuning in.
And until next time, Ghosts and Ghouls, have a frightful eve.